Right, so let's look at the ideas behind socialism in Europe and the Russian Revolution. Now, in the previous chapter, you read about powerful ideas of freedom and equality that circulated in Europe after the French Revolution. The French Revolution opened up the possibility of creating a dramatic change in the way in which society was structured. So, the first paragraph is all about just recapitulating and re understanding the impact that the French Revolution started. Now, as you have read before, the 18th century society was broadly divided into estates and orders, and it was the aristocracy and the church which controlled economic and social power. Now, suddenly, what happened after the revolution, it seemed possible to change this. In many parts of the world, including Europe and Asia, new ideas about individual rights and who control the social power began to be discussed. Now in India, Rajaram Mohan Roy and De Rosio talked of significance of the French Revolution, and many others debated the ideas of post-revolutionary Europe. The developments in the colonies in turn reshaped these ideas of societal change. So the key idea in this paragraph is that the impact of French Revolution was felt worldwide, not just in the colonies but also in the other countries in Europe. Now, not everyone in Europe, however, wanted a complete formation of society. Responses varied from those who accepted that some change was necessary but wished for a gradual shift to those who wanted to restructure the society radically. Now, some were conservatives, others were liberals or radicals. Now, what do these terms really mean in the context of the time? What separated the strands of politics and what linked them together? We must remember these terms do not mean the same thing in all context or time. So this is the key thing that you have to remember. So now, as you know, other countries caught up the with the idea of this change in society. Obviously, there were two types of people. You can just kind of think about it. That one pair of people who could be known as conservatives. They were the ones who wanted the change to be more gradual. And then you had other group of people who are known as liberals or radicals. These were like, yeah, the change should happen straight away, quickly. Now, and this will be a little bit off the focus as we discuss on these two terms. You will also find these terms used today as well, and keep in mind that the meaning of these terms changes according to the time period. Now, we will be looking briefly at some of the important political traditions of the 19th century and see how they influence change. Then we will focus on one historical event in which there was an attempt at a radical transformation of the society. Through the revolution in Russia, socialism became one of the most significant and powerful ideas to shape society in the 20th century. So, effectively, what we are going to look at is the political ideas in 19th century, and then there will also be focus on the idea of socialism and how it has impacted. Okay, now let's look at the terms liberals, radicals, and conservatives. So, one of the groups which looked to change the society were liberals. Liberals wanted a nation which tolerate all regions. Liberal is like more free, right? You can look up the word in the dictionary. Now, we need to remember that at this times the European states usually discriminated in favor of one religion or the another. For example, Britain favored the Church of England, Austria and Spain favored the Catholic Church. Liberals are also opposed the uncontrolled power of dynastic rulers. They wanted to safeguard the rights of individuals against governments. They argued for a representative, elected primary government subject to laws interpreted by a well trained judiciary that was independent of rulers and officials. However, keep in mind that they were not Democrats. They did not believe in universal adult franchise, that is, the right of every citizen to vote. They felt men of the property mainly should have the vote. They also did not want the vote for women. So this is a key thing here. Liberals does not mean Democrats. So in this paragraph, you get some of the key ideas behind what the liberals used to believe and what they didn't also want. Okay. Now, if you look at radicals, right, they wanted a nation in which the government was based on the majority of a country's population. Now, many supported women's suffragette movement, and unlike liberals, they opposed the privileges of great landowners and wealthy factory owners. They were not against the existence of private property but disliked concentration of property in the hands of a few. So, these were the key ideas for the radicals. Now, conservatives were like opposed to radicals and liberals. After the French Revolution, however, even conservatives had opened their minds to the need for change. Earlier in the 18th century, conservatives had been generally opposed to the idea of change. By the 19th century, they accepted that some of the change was inevitable, but believed that the past had to be respected and change had to be brought about through a slow process. So, such differing ideas about societal change clashed during the social and political turmoil that followed in the French Revolution. The various attempts at revolution and national transformation in the 19th century helped define both the limits and potential of these tendencies. So, a key thing here is to be able to understand how to differentiate between the key ideas of the liberals, radicals, as well as conservatives. And I would encourage you to just create a table like this and fill it in, like liberals, radicals, and conservatives. Yeah, and then you can say what were their ideas behind government. What did they think about the, for example, concentration of property? What did they think about women? Right? So these are the main things, right? And you figure out if there are any other areas that you can draw out. So creating this kind of matrix will help you to understand the key differences between these and the similarities, if any. Okay. Now let us look at the industrial society and the social change. So these political trends were signs of a new time, that this whole set of people having different ideologies. It was a time of profound social and economic changes. It was a time when new cities came up and industrialized regions developed. Railways expanded and the industrial revolution occurred. So, this is the main thing. Now, when these ideas were happening, what was the context? What was the time? It was the time for the industrial change or the industrial revolution. Now, keep in mind that the ideas are shaped by the times during which those ideas are discussed, right? And that's the interconnection that we need to look into. So what did this industrial revolution do? So industrialization, it brought men, women, and children to the factories. Work hours were long and wages were poor. Unemployment was common, particularly during times of low demand for industrial goods. Housing and sanitation were problems since towns were growing rapidly. Today, we just take housing and sanitation, the availability of a good house and good, like you have the toilets and so on, it's just a given. But that was not the case during those times. Now, liberals and radicals, they searched for solutions to these issues. Now, almost all the industries were the property of individuals. Liberals and radicals themselves were often property owners and employers. Having made their wealth through the trade or industrial ventures, they felt that such effort should be encouraged, that its benefits would be achieved if the workforce in the economy was healthy and citizens were educated. Opposed to the privileges of the old aristocracy had by birth, they firmly believed in the value of the individual effort, labor, and enterprise. If freedom of individuals was ensured, if poor could labor, those with capital could operate without restraint. They believed that societies would develop. Many working men and women who wanted changes in the world rallied around liberal and radical groups and parties in the 19th century. So you can see how the working men and women were really attracted by the hope, by the ideas of the liberals and the radicals, because it gave them the hope of a better future. It was all dependent on meritocracy and not by birth, just like the aristocrats would be. So the ideas that the liberals were giving, they were kind of representative and gave the working class people a hope of living a better life for themselves and their family. Now, some nationalists, liberals, and radicals, they wanted revolutions to put an end to the kind of governments that had established in Europe in 1815. In France, Italy, Germany, and Russia, they became revolutionaries and worked to overthrow existing monarchs. Nationalists talked of revolutions that could create nations where all citizens would have equal rights. Now, after 1815, Giuseppe Mazzini, an Italian nationalist, conspired with others to achieve this in Italy. Nationalists elsewhere, including India, read his writings. Now, think about it. You being a part of a working class, either you are a child or a laborer who's, kind of going to the factories doing the hard work. And you have this idea of, oh, having a world where everybody has equal rights. That idea is very attractive to you. So this was one of the reasons why you would have found yourself being more attracted and supporting the ideas of the nationalists or the liberals and the radicals. So in the next video, we'll look at how socialism arrived in Europe.